speaking of change, last thing I want to talk about here, Najee Harris. Topic of conversation seemingly every week for one reason or another. The replacement of Jaylen Warren seems to be the hottest hitter, the hottest headline, whatever you want to say. Well, USA Today's Corey Woodruff, apologize if I got that name wrong, believes that that change could happen, and that if the Pittsburgh Steelers are looking for it to happen, they could get a pretty decent penny for Najee Harris. He wrote 32 traits, one for each team that he believes they should execute before the trade deadline. Me and you don't see eye to eye on the compensation for this one, but he says Najee Harris is the guy they should move. Quote, this might be a little surprising. Don't think it's surprising for anybody. I just want to toss that out there right now. I think everybody who watches, covers, talks about the Pittsburgh Steelers read that first sentence and went, no, we've all been thinking this for a long time. Okay. This might be a little surprising, but the Steelers might want to transition running back Jaylen Warren into the starting spot. Again, just not surprising at all. Shout out to Corey, but not surprising at all. That starting spot, and consider sending Harris to a team that would better utilize his talents. Harris hasn't quite been the 1,000-yard rusher we've gotten used to this season, and it'd be very easy to see a Super Bowl caliber team calling up the Steelers and seeing if Harris is available. He then says that he believes that the Pittsburgh Steelers can get as much as a second-round pick to a team that is looking to make a playoff run this season and needs a hard-nosed, kind of gritty running back. I mean, I think that would be a great move for the Pittsburgh Steelers. You do not think that would be a great move for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I want to hear your thoughts on Corey's belief here and his idea of trading Najee Harris.
Yeah, I'm on board with this theoretically. You know, like the concept of trading Najee is not something I'm opposed to. I've talked about it before. I think Jalen's got to take more of the carries. He's just better suited for this offense right now. But
yeah,
come on, Najee's not nearly. Najee's being underrated here, I think.
Yes,
and I think a second round pick would be a pretty disappointing return for a player of his caliber that still has a lot left to give. I get it. You might not get a first round pick, but only 1 second seems like wildly underrating a guy who was drafted in the first round himself, and in my opinion has played up to that caliber. You know, like he has played like a first round running back, in my opinion, especially a back end of the first round running back. Like, I don't know. I think if you're gonna go for a second, I think you got to get one more pick out of that. And this is like, you used this line last week, but this is Omar Khan we're talking about. You know, if he's making that trade, like, I don't think he would settle for anything less. If it's a second round pick, it's got to come with a fourth round or two or something like that. There's got to be a little more meat on that bone, I think, for them to seriously consider a Najee trade, because he's more valuable than a second round pick is to the Steelers right now, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, right now I agree with that one. If you're talking right in this instance and where the Pittsburgh Steelers stand, and, you know, I talked about this on my to-go, I kind of broke the whole thing down, but you start from the beginning of this would be surprising maybe to transition to Jaylen Warren, would not be surprising at all, would be the most predictable and, you know, fan sought out action and move the Pittsburgh Steelers could make. Hasn't played like the 1,000-yard rusher. I think also, sorry, don't agree with that one, because I think if you've watched Najee Harris the last 2 seasons, it has been 1,000 yards per every ounce of effort that he could possibly put onto a field. It has not been easy. It has not been explosive runs. It has been, we're going to hand this guy the ball 300 times a season, and he's going to get 1,000 yards out of it and 7 touchdowns, because he's been a 7 touchdown scorer the last 2 seasons. And we're going to ground and pound him right to 1,000 yards, 0 help, 0 offensive line. This year they said, you know what? Let's not kill Najee Harris. Let's give him a little bit of help. Let's actually play Jaylen Warren, allow him to be part of this offense as well, so that when we get to a spot where it's week 17, week 18, Najee isn't limping around talking about how he has to do yoga 4 times a week to be able to stand. And that's why he's not on pace to be 1,000-yard rusher. And I still think he is. Like, he's got 247, I believe, on the season. He's averaging 3.9 yards a carry. Like, I mean, it's not bad to have for a guy who was only taking 60% of the snaps compared to last year when it was like 95% of the snaps. I don't think that his production has gone down. I just think his usage has gone down. I also don't think that the Steelers are looking at this and saying, "Hey, call Kansas City, call Buffalo. Who needs a running back? Who's in the hunt for the Super Bowl? Let's give them a running back." I think they're thinking, well, when we're in the hunt for the Super Bowl at the end of the season, we're going to need Najee Harris. Like he's going to be part of this game. He's probably going to be the biggest impact that we have to get us into and through the postseason. So I just don't think that train of thought matches up when it comes to the compensation part of it. If you're giving up Najee Harris for a second round pick, in my opinion, that is a steal. I just don't think, I think a guy who has 1, maybe 2 years left on his deal, if you pick up his 5th-year option, I think that is a big if. I mean, cool, but you're gonna have to either make the decision where you don't pay this guy, which chances are you're not gonna pay this guy, or and you just let him walk. Or you could trade him next year, I guess, and see what you could get out of him. But at that point, who's trading for a running back on the last year of their deal in the middle of the season to say, yeah, no, we're probably not going to pay him, and here's a second round pick. I just don't think that would add up. I think that getting a second round, maybe a second and a fourth, you might be there. Like maybe the Omar Khan theory holds some ground here. But at minimum, a second round pick, I think, is a good move. Do I think the Steelers would make it? I want to say no, but I think I just, like if you're a team and you're calling me tomorrow and I'm Omar Khan and you're saying, hey, let's start with a second rounder. Let's see what we could go from there. Like you got to be listening, right? There's no way you're sitting. No, I'm good. We're good. Thank you. Like you got to be listening.
I think you're listening, but the extent to which you're listening, I don't know. You can start at a second round pick, but I don't think that's where this conversation ends. Like I just don't. I don't know. I think there are plenty of teams that if they are in the hunt and they think a bruising running back who can also catch the ball in the backfield is the key to them making a longer postseason run, like who cares about it? Like a second round pick is pennies to pay for a guy that you really believe in and think can carry you pretty far, it could help you get pretty far. So like what's thrown in a fourth or a third at that point, like
yeah, but
if
at
you're
that
the
point,
Steelers,
if you're
not
talking third, fourth, or second and a third, or second and a fourth, I'm listening. I'm all ears on this conversation.
Yeah, I just I just don't think the Steelers are going to settle for a second round pick, and I think you can start your conversation there, but like that's the start.
What if it's Chicago?
What do you mean? Like,
what if it's Chicago that calls? Right now, they have the first pick and the second pick in the draft, which means you're essentially getting the 32nd pick or 33rd pick in the draft as of right now.
Well,
what if it's Chicago?
I don't know. Isn't Chicago like on the verge of blowing everything up? Like I don't know if that's
100%. But they were on the verge of blowing everything up last year, and then they called and made a trade for Chase Claypool. And I want to say that I would believe that they wouldn't do it again, but I would believe that they do it again.
Well, were they on the verge of blowing things up last year? Because then they trade for DJ Moore, and that
was after the season.
And they traded for Claypool midseason, right?
Midseason. He was supposed to be their guy midseason. But now they don't have a running back. They just lost like 3 running backs.
Yeah. Yeah, but they're also, I mean, I don't know what do they need. I mean, yeah, they lost a bunch of running backs, but didn't they had Dante Foreman. They had a backup that played real well for them last week. Like, and also like, what do they care? Like, I think if you are Chicago, you are like draft picks are your most valuable asset right now. And unless you're trading for like a game, I don't know. I think the only reason they would start offloading draft picks is to get some kind of game-changing quarterback. And
they don't want that. They want Caleb Williams. That makes sense. Okay, so it'd have to be a Super Bowl team. At that point, is almost a third-round pick. At that point, I understand. I see where you're coming from. I agree. I
respect Najee Harris as a trade asset.
I do respect Najee Harris as a trade asset, but I just in the grand scheme of where running backs are in the NFL, I don't see Najee Harris's time in Pittsburgh lasting longer than next season. And I just think at that point, like you're making the decision of, what could happen. And at the same point, like, I mean, is he still worth more than a second round pick if the second half of the season Jalen touches the rocks 70% of the time and Najee touches it 30% of the time?
Yeah, we're keeping him fresh.
Look at. I think that I just don't think running backs have that value. But I see where you're coming from, and I do think that I think in the grand scheme of things, if I'm the Pittsburgh Steelers, I'm not even listening. Like I'm just why would I get rid of Najee Harris when Kenny Pickett's a giant question mark? We're 2-0 in the AFC North, and we're 3-2 overall. Like we're still a playoff team, and if we're gonna win, we need Najee Harris. Like it's not gonna be through our quarterback; it's gonna be through our running back. So I don't think they're listening.
Yeah, I agree with that too. I don't think this is we're arguing about compensation for a trade that I don't think either of us really see kind of happening at all. Because I still don't think if you're the Steelers, you are looking for ways to get better and make a more plausible playoff push, and that a trade like that would not help you at all.
No. You want to trade for Jalen Ramsey or somebody? Cool. You want to give Najee Harris up for Patrick Surtain? Let's have a phone call. Let's see what's going on. Well, all right. What about this one? Chicago calls Jalen Johnson, guy, maybe middle tier young corner, starting experience, Najee Harris, straight up.
Straight up? Sure. Why not? Well, because I think you also got to think about where Anthony McFarland is.
True.
Like, he
does return?
Is he healthy? Is he fully healthy, and is he capable of being a running back 3 or running back 2? Like, perfectly fine with him as a running back 3, but running back 2, that seems a little dicey.
Yeah. Not running back 2 in a system where you have a running back 3 that could contribute as a ground and pound guy. You know what I mean? Like if it's a situation where Anthony McFarland and Jaylen Warren are your 1-2 punch on explosive plays, and then you have like a Mark Ingram or somebody or a Najee Harris who comes in here on 3rd and short and 2nd and short or whatever to kind of get those 3-4 yards. Agreed there. Like I think Anthony could be good. If it's Jaylen Warren and Anthony, you have the smallest backfield in the NFL, and it's not looking good. I'm looking at real quick before we head out of here. Free agents out there just to say, you know what, maybe Leonard Fournette, big name, Mark Ingram.
True, but he's about to sign with someone. I think Fournette is.
Fournette was reportedly going to Buffalo. Then it was reported that he wasn't going to Buffalo. Does have some interest from a couple of teams. You don't know who those teams would be. That's really all. Benny Snell Jr. is still out there. Talk to him, I guess.
True.
Give him a phone call.
True.
Hey,
familiar in the system.
Benny Snell Jr. He'll get you 2 yards. Doesn't get you much more, but he'll get you 2 yards.
If only there were 5 downs, you'd be golden.
If only there were 5 downs.